Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or The Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be going in-depth into my wide receiver start or sit decisions for week number 8 of the 2022 fantasy football season. Inside today's video, I'll be going in-depth into every single matchup from Thursday Night Football all the way until Monday Night Football, and I'll be telling you guys whether I believe you should start or sit the wide receivers in all of those games. But before we could get on into things, I would like to ask that if you guys are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, that you please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure that you do leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. And if you do want to follow me on Twitter, please do so at NotoriousFNTSY. I would also like to ask that if you guys have any questions about week number 8, to please make sure that you ask down below in the comment section. So without further ado, let's get in to today's video, week number 8, wide receiver start or sit decisions. We begin with Thursday Night Football, the Baltimore Ravens at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And if we were talking about this game prior to the season kicking off, prior to week 1, we all probably would have thought that this was going to be one of the most exciting and entertaining Thursday Night Football matchups. You got the Ravens and Lamar Jackson looking to put up yet another solid season after having a not-so-hot 2021 campaign due to injuries. And then you would have thought, oh, the Bucs, they're looking like maybe they can make the Super Bowl again. They're one of the most fierce teams in the NFC. And now we got a Ravens team that is kind of running cold over the last couple of weeks, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who look like complete and utter fucking horseshit. With that said, though, I still do think you got to be starting Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, but I am not saying that these guys are must-start wide receivers, whereas if you have some other options that are listed as start-worthy wide receivers in this video, you might want to start them over Evans and Godwin, and especially over Godwin. Mike Evans missed a wide-open touchdown. That was a ball that was thrown great by Tom Brady. He doesn't catch it, and then after that, the whole game went just fucking bananas. It just went absolutely wrong for the Buccaneers after Mike Evans dropped that wide open touchdown to begin the game. It was very early on in the game, and then everything went wrong for them. Again, I'm not here trying to defend Tom Brady. I'm not getting down on my knees and giving this guy the metaphorical gawk gawk 9,000 defending him, because Tom Brady has not been good this season. The divorce or whatever the fuck is happening at home is clearly impacting him. Either that or he has just fallen off the edge of the earth, like the fact that he's so old. Maybe that's impacting him. I'm not too sure. But Mike Evans and Chris Godwin are both start-worthy wide receivers, but not players that at this point I feel like I need to force into my lineup. The other Tampa Bay Buccaneers, will Julio Jones ever return? Probably not. Russell Gage is definitely a sit. I don't even feel super comfortable rolling out Evans and Godwin, so I definitely don't feel super comfortable with Russell Gage. Then we got the Baltimore Ravens. Rashad Master Bateman did end up playing last week. I do think that as the season goes on, Rashad Bateman could end up being a must-start player. He is very boom or bust because he has that big play upside, but if he only gets 2 targets, he might also only get like 12 yards, or he could turn those 2 targets into 2 catches and 120 yards and 2 touchdowns, right? You never know with him, which makes him a bit risky. If you're in a deeper league, I think I would consider him because of how the Buccaneers defense has looked. Devin Duvernay and Demarcus Robinson are both sits for me. Now we move to the London game, the game that everyone and their mother is so excited to wake up for on Sunday. If you live on the West Coast and this game starts at like 6:30 in the morning and you legitimately wake up to watch this game and you're not a Broncos or a Jaguars fan, there is something incredibly wrong with you. Now, I love football, so there's something wrong with me because I'm going to wake up early in the morning. Now, I live on the East Coast, so it's a little bit more bearable. After Halloween weekend, I'm going to wake up bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, and watch this game. I'm going to watch it, but I assume most people are not going to end up catching this one. We got for the Broncos, I am going to start Courtland Sutton. Now, I am not 100% sure if Russell Wilson is going to be ending up starting in this game. He said he has fucking Wolverine blood before he ended up getting ruled out, and Rippon ended up playing. Wolverine blood would probably mean that he should have started last week, but he doesn't end up doing that. It's very clear that his agent is sending something to Rappaport or whoever reports that Russell Wilson is out, because it's like, oh, he tried his hardest. He's really working hard. Like, no one fucking says that when they're talking about a player. It's very funny. Mr. Unlimited, I think, ends up playing in this game. Cortland Sutton is a start, but again, how confident can I be in him with how bad this Broncos team has looked? Christian Kirk, every single week to me, is a start-worthy wide receiver. Now, obviously, the Broncos defense is incredibly tough. The Broncos defense really stopped that New York Jumbo Jets offense last week. I do think Christian Kirk still gets it done because of a volume standpoint, but this is far from an ideal matchup. Jerry Jeudy right now is going to be a sit for me. I'm not too sure if he's going to actually end up getting traded or not, but there is a lot of rumors circling around that Jerry Jeudy might end up getting traded off of this team. Where will he go? You can have a million different landing spots that you can talk about. I've heard maybe the Giants, which would make a lot of sense since their wide receiver core is absolutely fucking decimated. But right now, as a Bronco, I don't really trust Jerry Jeudy, even though I think he's a good player. KJ Hamler is a sit. For the Jaguars, if you want to talk yourself into Zay Jones, I don't think this would be the matchup to do so because of how good the Broncos defense is. And then Marvin Jones Jr., we have seen some flashes of him. I still think he's a pretty good player, though he is getting up there in age, and that consistency has gone with the age. Next up, we move to the beginning of the true Sunday slate with the Carolina Panthers at the Atlanta Falcons, and I'm going to keep this one short and simple. DJ Moore finally fucking awoke. After weeks of me trying to do this mental gymnastics in my 14-team league that I'm in of, oh, you know what? Maybe this is the DJ Moore week. Maybe this is finally the time that he fucking shines. He goes from Baker to Walker. Oh, Walker throws it more to DJ Moore than Baker. So I start him, not last week, the week before, and he shits directly on my chest. But last week, the one time that I finally decide that I have had enough of this abuse from DJ Moore on my fantasy football team. He has battered down my fantasy team, and then I sit him down, and then guess what? The motherfucker arises. He has this humongous game, so shout out to DJ Moore. Well, it wasn't necessarily a huge game, but he had a start-worthy game up against the Falcons defense. I am willing to play him. He's definitely not like a top 24 wide receiver in my rankings right now, but I can definitely talk myself into playing him, and I think he's an okay start. In terms of the other wide receivers, for the Panthers, Terrace Marshall Jr. as well as Shi Smith are going to be sits for me. Terrace Marshall, or Terrace Marshall is the actual name. I always thought his name was Terrace Marshall. It's actually Terrace Marshall, has shown some flashes. He looked really good at LSU. The issue is I don't think he'll ever be able to look super good at the NFL level in Carolina because the quarterback there just is not very good. You know, maybe if he had Joe Shiesty like he did in college, he'd be able to perform pretty well in Carolina. For the Atlanta Falcons, I am officially done with Drizzy Drake London until something changes. I am perplexed that this team is able to put so much draft capital into a tight end in Kyle Pitts and a wide receiver in Drake London, and yet they only throw the ball like 15 fucking times a game, and they combine for like 6 targets a game. It makes absolutely no sense, and Arthur Smith should not only be fired, he should be shot from a cannon directly into the sun. I am so tired of talking about this shit. It pisses me off every single week until something changes. Drizzy Drake London's on the bench. Damiere Byrd does have a fire touchdown celebration. He does, like, you know, the bird, because his last name is Bird, but B-Y-R-D, not B-I-R-D. Scored a touchdown, hit the bird celebration. It was awesome to see, but you're not starting him or Olamide Zacchaeus. Next up, you move to the Chicago Bears at the Dallas Cowboys. Now, the Bears looked ferocious on Monday Night Football up against the Patriots. The Zappy fever was getting to me. I was like, oh man, now Zappy's in the game instead of Mac Jones. The Patriots are going to wipe the fucking floor with the Bears, and Justin Fields has looked incredible over the last 3 or 4 games, and he has done so because Matt Eberflus and this team has committed to designing the offense for him, for creating plays where he is able to get off script. He's able to run the ball. He's able to do these things with his legs. Now, obviously, there are still times where it's like, damn, if only Justin Fields wasn't just fucking locked in on throwing to one guy, because he has this issue where if his first read isn't open, typically he's not going to throw the ball very accurately to the second guy, or he won't see the guy who's blatantly booty naked, wide fucking open. Okay, that's been an issue for him. Darnell Mooney, maybe if Justin Fields keeps getting better, maybe eventually I'll be able to talk myself into starting Darnell Mooney, but right now he's going to be a sit. But it is promising for the Bears how good Justin Fields has looked, and honestly, I think I want to start Justin Fields this week in fantasy, but we'll get to that in the quarterback video tomorrow. If you guys have ended up enjoying thus far, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below, as well as that like button. It helps me out a ton. So Dante Pettis, Equiminius St. Brown, they're also seeing some volume, but again, I don't really know know if I can trust them with how much the Bears still want to run the ball. And the fact is that Justin Fields isn't just lasered in. While he's lasered in on one receiver on every play, he isn't just lasered in on Mooney every single play, if you get what I'm saying. For the Dallas Cowboys, CeeDee Lamb and this whole team really disappointed up against the Lions on Sunday. I really thought that had all the makings to be a high-scoring game, and it appeared that the Dallas Cowboys limited the passing volume of Dak Prescott in that game. Thus, CeeDee Lamb has just an okay game. Now, if you played him in DFS and you spent all that money on the guy, then he definitely fucked you over. But if you played him in redraft, he wasn't that bad. Like, he still had an okay game, but obviously not what I thought he was going to do up against the garbage-ass Lions. And again, we're seeing a lot more rushing from this team. Kellen Moore really kind of is doing what they were doing with Cooper Rush under center, where they try to run the ball a little bit more, and that hurts both Lamb and Michael Gallup. But I think this is a spot for Lamb to bounce back. Same thing with Gallup. Gallup was a guy that you definitely could have been like, oh, wow, look at this matchup against the Lions. Dak is back. Michael Gallup doesn't do anything in that game. But even Kellen Moore or Mike McCarthy, I forgot who it was, talked about it after the game and said, yeah, we need to work on getting Michael Gallup more involved. So I think Michael Gallup will see an increased workload going forward. And by workload, I mean he's out there all the time. He just needs more targets. Next up, we pivot, and then Noah Brown will be a sit, obviously, now with Michael Gallup kind of back to normal. Next up, we move to my Miami Dolphins at the Detroit Lions. But before we break down this game in depth at the wide receiver position, I would like to give you guys a quick word from our friends, our sponsor over at BetMGM. They've been on your screen. Oh, I pointed the wrong way this whole entire time. They're underneath the lion right there. Now, they have a brand new offer that is only going to be lasting for 2 weeks. So you got to take advantage of it now before it's gone. It is the BetMGM NBA no-brainer. If you bet $10 on any NBA game, pre-game money line, so you have to bet before the game starts, and on the money line, you'll win $200 if anyone hits a three-pointer in that game. You'll get $200 in free bets if anyone hits a three-pointer in that game. It's that simple. That's why it's called a no-brainer offer, because it is guaranteed to hit. And it doesn't even have to be any team in that, or any player in that game has to hit a three-pointer. It's just any player tonight has to hit a three-pointer, which is guaranteed to happen. So again, please make sure that you take advantage of this offer while you can. You have to be a new user to BetMGM, and you have to click on the link in the video description or in the pinned comment to activate this offer. I wish when I signed up for BetMGM that I would have been able to use this offer because of how good it is. Again, bet $10, you'll win $200 if any player hits a three-pointer in the NBA tonight, which is guaranteed to happen. So again, make sure you get those $200 of free bets. And while maybe you're not an NBA guy, you can just bet it on the NFL going forward. And say you have a bad time betting, you lose all of those free bets. Well, guess what? It only costs you $10 to bet $200 worth of bets. So next up, we'll move back on into things here. Make sure you guys do check that out. The Dolphins going up against the Detroit Lions in Detroit. So for the Dolphins, Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle are must-start wide receivers every single week. You don't even have to think twice about it. They had a solid game up against the Pittsburgh Steelers on Sunday Night Football, and the Dolphins didn't even kick the shit out of the Steelers like people would have thought, and still Hill and Waddle performed for fantasy football. If this does end up being a tit-for-tat, Rock'em Sock'em-esque robots, high-scoring back-and-forth game, then Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle could both finish inside the top 5 at the wide receiver position. Amon-Ra St. Brown ends up getting a quote-unquote concussion, but he didn't actually get a concussion. He was just ruled out of the game because of the new quote-unquote Tua rules, and so he's not able to come back into the game, but he should be good to go this week up against the Dolphins. Now, Xavier Howard is a tough matchup for any wide receiver, but it's not like Xavier Howard is just going to be glued to Amon-Ra St. Brown, in my opinion. So I think St. Brown should bounce back with a very solid performance in this game up against the Lions. I am not worried at all about Amon-Ra St. Brown. I still think you could potentially consider him to be a top 5 wide receiver in fantasy football going forward. For the other Lions, we got Josh Reynolds and Khalif Raymond. I think in this matchup, if Amon-Ra St. Brown for some reason can't play, again, I think he's going to play, then Josh Reynolds or Khalif Raymond would be start worthy. But unless that ends up happening, I think I'd rather just sit both of them down. Trent Sherfield is the other wide receiver of name for the Dolphins. Now, we paid the big bucks for Cedric Wilson. Cedric Wilson is nowhere to be found. You can't see him fucking John Cena style. It is embarrassing for how much money we paid for him. But hey, Sherfield's look pretty good. But again, he's only going to see a couple of targets every single game. Next up, we move to the Arizona Cardinals at the Minnesota Vikings. And in this one, we're obviously going to be starting DeAndre Hopkins for the Arizona Cardinals. He returns from his PED suspension and goes absolutely insane in the membrane in that game on Thursday Night Football up against the Saints. I assumed DeAndre Hopkins would come back perfectly fine. It's not like he was coming off of an injury. He's just coming back off the fucking pills, the PEDs, or the needle that he was probably shoving directly into his ass. He looked exactly the same as we've seen him in the past. He's not falling off the edge of the earth like fucking Humpty Dumpty off the wall because of some age clip. DeAndre Hopkins is still that guy for the Arizona Cardinals. They're going to be without Hollywood Brown for at least the foreseeable future, and D-Hop is that dude up against the Vikings, who have looked great this season. Shout out to the Minnesota Vikings, Mr. You like that, Kirk Cousins, but at the end of the day, D-Hop's the clear number one guy, and Kyler Murray, the short king himself, is going to feed him. But I will make it known, Call of Duty drops this week, and you know what that means? Maybe a bad Kyler Murray game. This guy, I think, is, after Call of Duty drops, for the first 2 weeks after that happens, I believe he is 0-6 or 0-5. Yikes. Next up, we move to the Minnesota Vikings part of the game, and then we'll kind of dip, dive, and duck back into the Cardinals. We got Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson both listed as starts in this game. Justin Jefferson's a no-brainer start every single week. I didn't even have to... You didn't click on this video to realize, oh, I should start Justin Jefferson, right? You already fucking knew that. Adam Thielen is a start in this game, but Adam Thielen has been pretty hit or miss this season. We have seen after the first couple of games that they're trying to get him involved a little bit more. The Cardinals defense got absolutely face-fucked by the New Orleans Saints last week, so I think Adam Thielen could get it done, but again, he's not a guy I'm forcing into my lineup. For the other Arizona Cardinals, we got Rondale Moore and Greg Dortch. Dortch is just, he's the opposite of Julio Jones. You know how Julio Jones is just allergic to scoring touchdowns? Greg Dortch is just made for the end zone. He's got a nose for the end zone. So shout out to Greg Dortch, but I'm not starting him here. Rondale Moore was a big disappointment last week. I think you should still roster him, but right now I'm just not the most comfortable playing him. And then KJ Osborne for the Vikings is a guy that some people talk themselves into in the offseason, but in reality he's probably on your league's waiver wire. He has not been good this season. Next up, we move to the Las Vegas Raiders, going up against the New Orleans Saints in the Superdome, the Caesar Dome, whatever the fuck it's called now, in New Orleans. Devontae Adams, again, a auto start in every single league. The Raiders are, you know, they don't have a good record this season, but they have played much better than the record says they are, okay? Before last week, they only had one fucking win. It looked like a disaster in Viva Las Vegas, but now things are looking a little bit better for them. Devontae Adams is obviously a must-start every single week. Chris Olave, at this point, the same thing can be said about him. The guy comes back last week and has a fantastic performance up against the Arizona Cardinals. I have to continue to roll this guy out, and with how not so hot the Raiders defense has looked, this one could be a pretty high-scoring game, even if Andy Dalton, the Red Rifle, the Ginger Ninja, ends up being the starting quarterback. I feel bad because I love Jameis Winston, but man, oh man, famous Jameis, he just hasn't been there this year. It's been tough as a famous Jameis truther that I am. For the Raiders, we also have Hunter Renfrow as well as Mac Hollins. Hunter Renfrow was a guy that going into the season, I was pretty high on. The guy has a lot of grit. He runs routes exceptionally, but this year he just really hasn't been a key part of the game plan. Makes sense though, right? They have Devontae Adams. Let's force feed him the ball. Mac Hollins has been scoring fucking touchdowns for this team, so I just don't feel as comfortable starting Hunter Renfrow, and if I'm being honest with you, if he has another subpar performance, I'm probably just going to cut him, and if Darren Waller doesn't play, I might flirt with wanting to start Mac Hollins. Marquise Callaway is going to be a sit for me. Michael Thomas, kind of like Jameis Winston, has just, like, I felt so vindicated at the beginning of the season. I talked so much about Michael Thomas in the offseason, how this motherfucker is a top 12 wide receiver when he's healthy, and then he comes back and it's like, oh, wow, would you look at that? Nick's a genius. This guy that's been a top 12 receiver for for a lot of his career, would you look at that? When he is playing, he's good, and now he hasn't been playing. So I guess the people who faded Michael Thomas might have been on the right side of history, and I was on the wrong side of history. But at the end of the day, Michael Thomas should return eventually. I just don't think it's going to be in this game. We haven't seen anything pointing towards him returning. And then Traquan Smith also. Both of these guys do have upside to maybe score a touchdown, but at the end of the day, I just don't really feel comfortable in stating that. Next up, we move to the New England Deflatriots at the New York Jumbo Jets in MetLife. The Jets are wearing those blacked out jerseys that, you look, I'm a Dolphins fan. I hate the Jets. I live in New Jersey, so that's why I hate the Jets even more. But, you know, They still look pretty cool. I'll give them that. For the Jets, though, we'll break them down real quick. You don't want to start any of them. Now, but Nick, Breece Hall got hurt, so aren't they going to look to throw the ball a little bit more? Maybe, but they just traded for James Robinson. Now, I know they didn't unload the clip to trade for James Robinson, right? It was like a 6th-round pick, and then if something happens, it becomes a 5th-round pick, I believe. Something like that. It's not like it was a 2nd or 3rd-round pick sent for James Robinson. So I think they're still going to continue to want to run the ball. Michael Carter's a solid running back as well, and that's the game plan because Zach Wilson hasn't looked very good. Now, I talked a lot about last week about how PJ Walker, his throwing chart is this, I think that's what it's called, the throwing chart, where it shows where he's throwing the ball to on the field. Like, most of his throws are behind the line of scrimmage. Last week, if you looked at Zach Wilson's throwing chart, it looked like PJ Walker's. He's just dumping the ball off. He's barely throwing it deep down the field. And that's why we get Elijah Moore throwing a fucking baby rage fit, getting all pissed off, getting all pissy with the team, because with cool Joe Flacco under center, he's getting the ball. Now with the MILF hunter Zach Wilson, he's not getting the ball. Now again, I did say Zach Wilson has not played good, and he hasn't really had that many opportunities to play great because they're not throwing the ball that much. If you're a Jets fan, I'm not telling you to fucking start burning your Zach Wilson jersey, right? Maybe he is the guy, right? I give people a long time. Like, these quarterbacks, if you're drafted early, I'll give you a couple of years, right? Daniel Jones finally shows that he's pretty good. Tua took him a couple of years, right? So I'm not saying that it's all over for Zach Wilson. But we're not talking about the future in fantasy football. We're talking about this week and the season going forward. Unless Salah really does try to throw the ball a lot more, I don't think you should be trusting any of these wide receivers. And Elijah Moore, notice how he's not listed on here because he might get traded. And just so you guys know, it takes me about an hour to edit this video after it's done before it actually comes out. Right now, it's 2:27 Eastern Standard Time. 4th wall break right there. I'll tell you what time it is. It's 10:25 or October 25th. And look, a trade might end up happening during this video. Might end up happening while I'm editing this video, might end up happening while you're watching this video, and I will update the comment section and type something in if a trade happens. I'm not too sure if Elijah Moore is going to play this week, but it doesn't really matter to me because I wasn't going to play him anyways. Garrett Wilson, Braxton Berrios, and Corey Davis are all sits. For the Patriots, will it be Zappy or will it be Mac Jones? They ask Bill Belichick, who's it going to be? He's like, hypothetically, and he's like just talking around. He's fucking dodging the question all around. I don't know who the starting quarterback is. I think it would be Mac Jones because Zappy kind of shit the bed towards the end, the Zappinator. But Zappy also looked good in that game, and Mac Jones didn't look good at all. But Mac Jones also couldn't get into rhythm because he only played for like 2 drives in the game, 3 drives. I mean, if Mac Jones or Zappy play, I'm fine playing Jacoby Myers. But that was a bad look losing to the Bears. But we all know the Patriots normally beat the dog piss off or out of the Jets. So I think Myers should be fine. Tyquan Thornton, Devontae Parker looked good last night, but I'm not going to start either of them, if I'm being honest with you. And the Jets' defense has been really, really good. Next up, we move to the Pittsburgh Steelers at the Philadelphia Eagles. And here we have Deontay Johnson listed as a start. But I am starting to feel some type of way negatively about Deontay Johnson. I was a big advocate of Deontay Johnson going into the season. I really thought this was potentially going to be a big year out of him. I didn't think the quarterback mattered, whether it was going to be Trubisky or Pickett, but it's pretty clear that I think Deontay Johnson needs Trubisky to be more successful because Pickett loves to force feed the ball to George Pickens. Deontay Johnson's still a start-worthy guy, but not a guy I have ranked in the top 24, whereas I think George Pickens should be a top 24 receiver. This guy continues to get force-fed the ball. He made a fantastic Tony Toe Taps, Antonio Brown level catch up against the Miami Dolphins on Noah Iguabini. Noah Iguabini. I don't know how the fuck to say his last name. Noah Iggy. Shout out to Iggy. He made the game-winning interception catch for the Dolphins. That was awesome, but I still don't know how to say his last name. It's a little complicated, but I think George Pickens should have a solid performance here. I don't think they're going to put Slay on Pickens. A.J. Brown's a must-start wide receiver every week. He's a little bit up and down. So is Devontae Smith because Jalen Hurts does run the ball. He's going to rush in some touchdowns. Miles Sanders is going to score some touchdowns, but at the end of the day, when you have such talented wide receivers like Smith and Brown, you just got to play them. But I definitely feel more comfortable with Brown over Smith. But again, like, they both are kind of hit or miss depending on the game. But I think you just got to play them. Chase Claypool's a sit, as is Quez Watkins. Chase Claypool, also one of those players who is on the fringe potentially of getting traded based upon what I've read. Next up, we move to the Les Titans at the Houston Texans. Brandon Cooks is going to be a start for me, but Brandon Cooks is basically a fringe start. He is hanging on by his fingertips to be a start in this video. Davis Money Mills has not looked that great this season. Again, I never really thought he was the franchise guy of the Texans. I thought people were giving a bit of a hard time. Well, let's be honest with you. Davis Mills is not that guy, pal. I understand. I just talked about how, oh, Nick, you just talked about how Zach Wilson, he deserves some time. Well, you deserve time when you're first round pick, not when you're Davis fucking Mills, who was not a first round pick. Brandon Cooks, to me, looks like he has kind of lost a bit of his fastball this year. But if you're in a deeper league, I think you can talk yourself into starting him. Robert Woods, Nick Westbrook, Cain, and Cody Hollister are going to be sits for me. The Tennessee Titans offense just wants to run through Tractor Cito, a.k.a. Derrick Henry, and I don't think we see much of Woods, Cain, or Hollister in this game. If I had to bet on one, it would be Woods. But again, the reason why the Titans are winning this game is not because they pass for 1,000,000 yards and Tannehill looks amazing. Tannehill's clearly banged up. It's because they are going to run the ball directly down the throat of the sorry-ass Houston Texans defense. We just saw what Josh Jacobs did to them. Nico Collins and Chris Moore are sits. I like Nico Collins, the player. It's just a tough scenario that he's in. Next up, we move to the Washington Commanders. The Commies going up against the Indianapolis Colts. Indianapolis, we got the battle of the backup quarterbacks here. We got Mr. Taylor Heineke, the GOAT himself. I love me some Taylor Heineke. And then we got Sam Ehlinger. Texas is back. Have you ever seen that video where Texas wins some, I don't know what the fuck they won because I'm not a big college football guy, but Ellinger's like, I'm back, or we're back. That's just what that comes from if you did not know already. So with Sam Ehlinger, I think we need to just continue riding on Pittman. I don't think Pittman necessarily has the same upside he has with Ryan, but I don't think he's going to be significantly worse with Ehlinger because realistically, right, put yourself in the brain of Sam Ehlinger. If I'm a rookie, or not a rookie quarterback, but you get what I'm saying. I'm a young quarterback. This is my first realistic start in the NFL. I'm going into the game. What do? I'm going to throw to the motherfucker who's the best guy on the team. That's what I'm going to do, and I'm going to dump the ball off to Jonathan Taylor. So I think Michael Pittman should have a decent game, but I'm not as confident with Ehlinger under center. For the Commanders, I'm actually more confident without Carson Wentz and with Taylor Heineke. I talked about this last week. The art of Taylor Heineke, the psyche of Taylor Heineke. This guy does the fuck it, the F it. Terry McLaurin's out there somewhere where he just cocks back, lets the fucker fly, and throws it deep down the field directly to Terry McLaurin. Now, Terry McLaurin might be in quadruple coverage. There might be 4 DBs around him, and and Heineke will just throw it to him. And that leads to interceptions, leads to big plays. It leads to at least, hey, you know what? Terry McLaurin's getting the ball. And Terry McLaurin performed in a big way last week up against the Packers. So I'm going to keep relying on Taylor Heineke to throw the ball to McLaurin. Curtis Samuel is kind of one of those fringe guys you might want to start, you might want to sit. He had a decent game with Heineke, so I think you could roll him out there. But things haven't been great for Samuel after the first couple of weeks. Cam Sims is a sit. And again, when we're talking about these Colts receivers, like, I'm investing in Michael Pittman. I'm saying you can play Michael Pittman because he's so good and because I think that Sam Ehlinger won't potentially take this guy's value, hit it with an RKO from out of nowhere. Whereas I think Paris Campbell, who's been force-fed the rock recently, might dip off the edge. Same thing goes with Alec Pierce. Next up, we move to a division matchup between the San Francisco 49ers at the LA Rams. In that game, I'm going to start Deebo Samuel. Now, Deebo Samuel is dealing with an injury and is considered day to day. If Deebo Samuel does not end up going on Sunday, again, I think he's going to play, then obviously you don't want to play him, and that boosts up Brandon Ayuk a little bit. Now, Deebo Samuel this season has definitely been a letdown outside of that game up against the LA Rams, where he absolutely took a monster deuce on that defense. Now, can he do it again? I think so. I'm definitely going to start him. But it's been a pretty disappointing year out of Deebo Samuel, if I say so myself. Brandon Ayuk has recently started to catch fire like that Hunger Games book. I think Brandon Ayuk should have a relatively solid performance up against the Rams defense. The Rams defense has been a humongous letdown this season. Cooper Kupp's a must-start wide receiver every single week, despite the fact that Matthew Stafford looks like Stevie Wonder in the pocket. At the end of the day, Matthew Stafford is still able to throw the ball to Cooper Kupp and Tyler Higbee. The whole rest of this offense is like exploding around them, but they're just walking away from the explosion unscathed. I know Higbee hasn't had the greatest season, but he keeps getting volume. Kupp, obviously, you start him every single week. Juwan Jennings is the other receiver for the 49ers that's kind of important to note. He could have any big game, any given game, but again, I don't think you really want to rely on that. Allen Robinson has been a bust, B-U-S-T, capital bust this season. Van Jefferson might be coming back this game. Van Jefferson's interesting. He's a big play guy. Just not too sure you want to rely on him because of how bad Matthew Stafford has been. Next up, we got the New York Football Giants at the Seattle Seahawks. Here, I am willing to play Wan'Dale Robinson, but not with a crazy amount of confidence. Now, Daniel Jones has completely turned the leaf, turned the other page this season. What Brian Daboll has done is Coach of the Year worthy. This guy might get a fucking Nobel Peace Prize with how good he has turned this team around. It is honestly shocking. It's not like he's been there for years, 2-3 years, then he figures it out, right? It literally is one offseason this season, and he's turned Daniel Jones into what Daniel Jones should have been his whole career. Joe Judge basically made us all think Daniel Jones was some bum. Now, I'm not here to tell you Daniel Jones is the second coming of fucking Patrick Mahomes or something. I don't think he's that great, but he's definitely a start-worthy quarterback in the NFL, and up against the Seahawks defense, he might be able to let that thing fly, and Wan'Dale Robinson right now, assuming there's no trade by Sunday, which could happen, Wan'Dale Robinson appears to be the number one wide receiver on that team. And again, seems like Jerry Jeudy might be heavily linked to the Giants. Maybe Odell comes back. I'm coming home. I'm coming home. Tell the world I'm coming home. Now, I don't remember exactly who sings that song, but I don't really sound like her. Next up, we move to the Seattle Seahawks side of the ball. Tyler Lockett is a start because DK Metcalf is out. Marquise Goodwin in deeper leagues, you can talk yourself into him. And I do like him a decent amount. Just don't know how trustworthy he is, if I'm being honest with you. And then we got the other Seahawks. Darius Slayton is a sit. Richie James is a sit. I really only trust Wan'Dale. I really only trust Lockett. But I can talk myself into Goodwin because he has looked good recently. And then D. Eskridge is going to be a sit. Next up, we move to Sunday Night Football with the Buffalo Bills and the Green Bay Packers in Buffalo. Now, the Packers laid a dud, and Romeo Doubs laid a goose egg. He scored a donut. 0 zilch points scored for him. That was a great matchup against the Commanders on paper. I told you guys to start Doubs, and I'll just eat it. I was wrong, but I don't feel like I was the idiot there, right? Like I understood the scenario, understood the matchup. Doob should have a good game. He doesn't. The Packers are also a team that might be looking to sneaky get a wide receiver. Not really sneaky. Everyone kind of pointing the finger like, hey, get a fucking receiver. Allen Lazard has been a top 32 wide receiver for the last couple of weeks. He's been incredibly reliable. Up against the Bills defense, I don't necessarily expect this great performance, especially with how Rodgers looked against the Commanders, but I still think Lazard is start-worthy. Stephon Diggs, obviously a must-start wide receiver every single week. Gabe Davis, when healthy, has the upside to be a top 5 wide receiver, just like Stephon Diggs does. Any given Sunday, I'm playing Gabe Davis. Now, he doesn't see a crazy amount of targets. He's probably not going to see 8+ targets like Diggs can, but all Gabe Davis needs is 4 targets to score a zillion fantasy points because he can take 4 targets for 3 receptions, 110 yards, and multiple touchdowns. So Gabe Davis is an incredible player. You definitely want to be starting him. Next up, we move to the other players in this game. Again, kind of Romeo Doubs is a guy that I'm sitting right now. I think maybe we're kind of pushing the pendulum too far, like, oh, he'll be fine in this game. But again, the Bills defense is tough. Sammy Watkins is a sit as well. Same thing goes with Isaiah McKenzie. Final game here, we got Monday Night Football with the Cincinnati Bengals at the Cleveland Browns. For the Browns, you're going to keep rolling out Amari Cooper. Now, Amari Cooper hasn't necessarily been incredibly consistent this season, but I do think in a matchup up against the Bengals, he should be able to get it done. He is the clear number 1 receiver after all on the Browns, and the Browns did suffer an injury to their number 2 receiver, who's not actually a receiver, but David Njoku. He has been a big target for this team. A big target because he's a big guy as well as a guy that's been targeted heavily. So I think Amari Cooper still has a pretty good game here. Chase Higgins, Titty Boy T. Higgins, and Tyler, Boyd are all starts in this game. Boyd absolutely just sliced up that defense last week. That was crazy of the Falcons. He sliced them up like it was O.J. Simpson, and I fully expect Boyd to probably let down this week, but you still got to start him every week because of the upside that he has. Chase and Higgins, you're starting him every week, obviously. And then the other guys in this game, DPJ has looked pretty good recently, but I don't think in a normal fantasy league you want to start him. Same thing goes with David Bells. Thank you guys all so much for watching today's video. If you did end up enjoying, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below, as well as hitting that like button. It would help me out a ton. If you do want to follow me on Twitter, please do so at NotoriousFNTSY. And make sure you check out our BetMGM NBA no-brainer offer. Again, bet any $10 on any pregame money line in the NBA tonight, and you'll win $200 in free bets if there is a 3-pointer made in the NBA tonight, which is a lock. Again, you got to be a new user to BetMGM. It must be a pregame money line bet, and you must click the link in the description or in the pinned comment to activate your offer. I love you guys all so much. I hope you have a great rest of your guys' day, and as always, good boy.